Richmond, north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just wanna have total control. Living in
That is such a valuable piece of advice there.
These are the sorts of things that we should talk about right in the first 5 minutes of the podcast.
Started giving people free quotes.
In sunshine and rainbows, it is
Definitely a thing for just being a solo
The
operator.
change in mindset makes a massive difference.
Welcome to Aussie Lawn Stars.
Welcome to Aussie Lawn Stars. Today I have got John Pajak in the dungeon. How you doing, John?
I'm doing great, Gary. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm pretty good. Now I've got to explain this to you. My room in the house here where I record, it has no external windows. It's inside the house without an external exits anywhere. So I call it the dungeon.
There you go. Well, I like it. It's cool. You got a good background going on there.
My chair even squeaks a little bit, so it sounds really dungeon-like. But anyway, welcome, John. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited that we're getting the opportunity to talk with one another today. I know it's been a long time coming, and that's all my fault.
No, not at all. We've been trying to line this up for a while. We both worked out that this would be a good little collab where we do an interview for your podcast and an interview for my podcast. And I think we've got a lot in common, John, not just our age, both 48 years old, mate.
Mm-hmm.
But, we got a similar philosophy when it comes to business. And we're both Christians, so I don't often talk about Christianity on my podcast because it's business focused, but I don't mind admitting I'm a Christian, talking about it occasionally too. But anyway, you are based in the US, and did you say it's Indiana?
Yeah, we're in Northwest Indiana. If you wanted a quick geography lesson, just look up Gary, Indiana, or the more popular city that we're next to is Chicago, Illinois. So we're in Indiana, but we're very, very close to the Illinois border. So that's why sometimes I just say, hey, we're from Chicago, just because it's close enough.
When you say Gary, is that like the same name as I've got, Gary? Or
yeah, like your first name, except just one R instead of two. It's Gary, Indiana. It used to be the crown jewel of the Midwest back in the 30s and 40s, maybe the 50s and 60s too, but it started to lose its gleaming and shiningness. The economy changed, and then it became a very hostile place. But used to be the murder capital of the world, but I don't live in Gary. I just live nearby it. So,
okay, fair enough. Away from all those murderous people. Lovely. So, John, give people a bit of history with you, and I think that's the best place to start because I've learnt a lot about you today. But your history, you've worked in our industry, and lawn care, gardening, landscape maintenance is sort of the industry that we're talking about. But you've been in the industry for over 20 years, and currently you're not actually cutting grass, so to speak, but you're doing the treatment plans. That's the predominant business that you're in nowadays, and podcasting, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been in the green industry for 25 plus years. We never called it the green industry back then. You were just a landscaper or whatever. But just a very brief overview of my history has just been, I started working in the late 90s in this just as a hired hand, turned into a lead for that company, decided I was smart enough to start my own business. It failed. It was just a fantastic failure. Luckily, I was able to get out of it and not lose my shirt. Well, I think I lost my shirt, but I didn't. I was able to keep my pants and my boots, so we were good. But then it's kind of a crazy road that I've been on, and I know in retrospect that it was needed. Because after I left the business that I failed at, I decided to go back to school. I became a college instructor for a time being. Then I left that completely, went into construction, eventually just as a laborer at first. Then I turned into doing more of the office work. I did a lot of payroll. I did a lot of estimates for $1 million projects. Long story short, ended up getting out of that too and decided to go back to scratch an itch of, I'm going to start a business again and it's going to be successful this time.
So let
And
me understand. If in the process of doing estimates for large projects, you would have learnt a lot of financial stuff there, yeah?
yes and no. Like a lot of it didn't develop into like what I do now until after I got out of that. But
Okay.
there were a lot of principles that I picked up while I was doing those estimates, because I had to understand that every man hour had a price, every piece of equipment had an hourly rate,
Yep.
the fuel that goes into it. So there was a lot of things that I learned, and then it wasn't until later, while I built my second business, it's still in business now. We started that in 2015. This is our 10th full season going into 2026. But somewhere along the way, I started helping other businesses here in the States, like, trying to help avoid the mistakes that I had made. So as I was learning and implementing all these things, I was doing it for myself, but then I started doing it for others. And then eventually, I think it was around like 2018, that's when I officially started to, I think that was the first time I got paid to help somebody else as a consultant.
Yeah, okay.
And ever since then, I mean, it's just been, it's got its own life. So not only do I have a successful lawn care business, but I also have, a consulting and, I wouldn't say it's a consulting firm, but I do consultations and coach others.
Yeah, okay. So you've been able to utilize what you know about our industry in conjunction with what I would say is similar to the Mike Michalowicz business principles.
Yes. I mean, I'm a Dave Ramsey certified financial coach.
Yeah,
So
okay.
I got that. And then also it just goes hand in hand with Mike Michalowicz's
For sure.
his Profit First, especially because that makes a lot of sense to me, and I incorporate that even today with people that I help get their numbers right in their business. Because one of the biggest things I really do, I have a program called Budgets, Break Evens, and Bottom Lines, and that really goes deep into people's financials, and not really for their personal side, but really their business, so that they could price their services profitably.
That's awesome. So your podcast is an extension of that in the title Profits with Pajak.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you're talking about your program budgets, break-evens and bottom lines, it sounds like the words you use all resonate with me in terms of being very heavily focused on knowing what things cost and what you need to do to make sure that you're actually making a profit margin.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just from our conversations, from today, we are very well aligned with, facilitating others to make sure their business is worth it. Because there's nothing worse than you're putting all your blood, sweat, tears, and years into a business, and then it turns out it's not supporting you.
Yeah, that's
Your
it.
work, when you work for your business and it doesn't work for you, it's just not going to work out. And unfortunately, I've been on the receiving end of that, and you're going to go belly up.
Yeah. Well, when I started my business, I actually bought a lawn care run off a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Don't recommend buying business off a friend, but it worked. And, he said, oh, you charge around $50 an hour. And I was coming from a job where I was earning $25 an hour. I was like, $50 an hour, that's awesome. And after a year or two, I was like, oh, I've had some of the harder life lessons getting the business started, and I'm ready to put on an employee. I was still charging $50 an hour, and I paid the employee $20 an hour. And for every minute that he worked, I realized very quickly I was losing money, not making money.
Yeah. That is a nightmare. And, unfortunately, there are too many business owners that are out there that they're doing that and they don't even realize it. They feel the pinch because they're like, well, I'm doing all this work. I'm busy. I might be working 10, 12, 14 hours a day. And I'm always busy. But when they look at their bank account, things are just not, it doesn't match up.
Yeah. That's it. I've spoken to so many people doing this podcast. And let me just preface that with I've learned a lot of really positive lessons from speaking to that many people, but there's so many stories of people that are paying employees and they keep on grinding even though they're not making a profit margin. They're barely, like, if they are making any money at all, they're barely scraping by, or they're going backwards slowly, reaching a point where they can't sustain it.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, and the same has happened for me too, where you have individuals that maybe they've been in business for quite a while, 5-6 years. I've even dealt with people that have been in business for 10 plus years, and they just aren't making any forward movement. And they're like, I have employees, I have this equipment and everything, but they're like, man, I cannot afford to get a new truck. They had a new truck 7 years ago, and now it's getting worn out. The equipment is about the same age. It's getting worn out. They're just, basically they've got these old workhorses that are barely keeping up now, and they're paying a ton of money in repairs. And you're like, I just don't understand how other people could get new equipment every couple of years or this and that. And it's like, well, one, when you see things on social media, don't always believe that it's always greener. The grass is always greener on that side, because unfortunately, a lot of people just portray the good things. And there's been plenty of times when I don't disclose personal information, but there have been plenty of times when business owners that look great on YouTube, they come to me, and it turns out they are underwater, and they over leverage themselves. They have all the nice equipment, they have all the nice trucks and things like that, but they are drowning. But they're showing it off and portraying it on YouTube as like, hey, this is the way to go. Instagram reels, oh, this is the highlight reel of how everything is, and everything's great in our business. And people try to aspire by copying them, and then when they do, they set themselves up for failure.
Well, I've followed Mike Andes since his early days, and I actually interviewed him not too long ago, but late 2025, the interview. When you watch him coaching other businesses and he posts a little clip on Instagram, you see this time and time again where it's like, okay, you've got a multi-million-dollar business and you haven't sorted out your profit margins or how to make sure you're paying your employees right. And it's like, so many of us in our industry just simply do not understand those basics.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons, like with my podcast particularly, I do have other guests on, but primarily when you listen in, I'm trying to give real lessons. And I know, like, for some people, they just can't believe that somebody would be giving all that information away for free. But again, you and I talked about it a bit pre-show and before. We have a bit of a calling that we don't want to see. I think both you and I want to help people avoid suffering as much as we can.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, sometimes, I have this saying now, it's like, you could lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But here's my little addition. Sometimes you lead that horse to water, and then he poops in the water.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
and
like
a lot of people do that, and I may have been responsible for doing that myself once or twice.
Mm-hmm.
But I do feel as though podcasting, sharing important information that may help another business, is a calling from God directly. And it's like, okay, I'm not out there trying to preach and convert people to Christianity. I'm just doing God's work by helping others. And it's just a case of going, okay, if somebody learns a lesson, or even if they don't learn that lesson and they have to come back half a dozen times before they go, oh, I get it now.
Mm-hmm.
It's a win.
It is. And here's the other thing too, is like, instead of browbeating people about it, when you lead by example, as you and I are both Christians, if we lead by example, then people look at it a different way. We're not afraid to talk about Jesus. We're not afraid to share everything that the knowledge that we've acquired. And it's not like, well, where am I getting this for? Or how? I've had a guy just recently was trying to justify whether I was a reputable source of information. And it's like, at first I was kind of like defensive about it. I'm like, well, listen, I have multiple, I've got a business that has multiple trucks and we have multiple routes. We have X amount of clients that we serve. And I'm like, I don't need to do that. Don't get defensive about it. You're like, who are you to, you know what? It doesn't matter. It's like, well, how about you do this instead of trying to figure out, why I'm valuable? Why don't you just, there's plenty of free resources that I have that allow you to judge for yourself whether we're going to work together. Okay. Like if I'm telling you something and you listen to it and you find that, yes, this is valuable, then make that decision on your own. I don't have to sit there and I don't argue with people anymore. I'm just like, well, if you want to work together, I would be happy to help you. If not, hey, I understand. Just good luck.
Yep.
I don't blow them off, but
yeah. My tagline there is, hey, I'm not going to try and convert you to anything. I let the fact that I have learnt myself from this podcast, the amount that talking to other people in this industry has changed my own perspective on business is evidence, and you can see that. And if you don't see it, that's okay, no problem. But I've become better at business in the time I've been podcasting, and I don't need to convince anyone otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. It's, again, I think for me, it's not about being right. It's just sharing all the struggles, and almost, it's like kind of like it's like sending out a scout ahead. Our industry is very well traveled. There have been people way before we did it and they were successful. There's going to be people that are going to be successful that are following in our footsteps, but
yeah,
it's not like we have to reinvent the wheel. But the good thing is, I think as we discuss a lot of these business principles, people will start to understand them a little bit better and not get all worried about the lingo that we use, because like sometimes we talk about ROI, return on investment, or KPIs, your key performance indicators. And that could be that whole thing could be if you're talking about KPIs, it's like, well, there's not a set standard of what a KPI is. It's like, well, what do you want to track? What should we be focusing on? What should we be be paying attention to so that it helps our business grow and be more profitable?
Yeah, and it's pretty easy if you translate the acronyms that put people off and you start asking them questions about what is it that you're not doing well in your business? What do you want to do better in? Oh, guess what? A KPI will help you to know whether that's heading the right direction or not.
Yeah. And, the wonderful thing about it is whether you're on, your continent of Australia or if you're here in the United States, these are pretty much universal. There's going to be a little bit of difference where, some of the slang may be different, or, some of the services we offer might be different or something like that. But really, when you break it all down, the numbers specifically become a universal language.
Catch Pro has been a supporter of Aussie Lawn Stars since its very first episode. Since we've formed a partnership with Catch Pro, a lot of Aussie Lawn Stars have made orders using the code LawnStars10 in all caps. And the lucky Ray from Sydney won the Equipment Defender racks right before Christmas. I'm letting you know that all the support for the month of February will be going towards BJ's choice of charity, Queensland Children's Hospital. Yeah, and I think if you look at some of those differences, and we won't go too deep into talking about the difference between a whippersnipper and a weed eater or whatever, but
right.
If you look at some of the differences, you go, okay, what's a customer worth in the US versus what's a customer worth in Australia? And there's huge variation even within Australia. Like the average lawn care customer in Australia might be worth somewhere around 1,500 Australian dollars at the moment. And it'd be interesting to know what you find there.
Well, yeah, I mean, depending on what services you're offering, that could be, right on the money, or that could be like, oh, no, that doesn't seem right. But once you do the conversions, again, like say for mowing in a cool season area, like where I'm at, where we only have maybe 32, let's just say a mowing company, where I live, we might only get 32 mows per year. just because I'm just saying, it's like if we get winter, things like that. And I think that might be pushing it in my area. Maybe it's 28, but, you could do the conversion and be like, okay, we're charging, I forgot how long. I sold our mowing division a couple of years ago, so I don't even know what our prices should be at this point because I really haven't been paying attention to it. But, a client might be worth, anywhere between $1,200 or $1,500, US dollars. So it all depends.
See, the variables there are interesting because they might be worth a similar amount there to what they are worth here. And there's some variables there like the exchange rate, or you get 32 mows in a year. We get about 20 mows in a year. But in saying that, I encourage people here to do weekly mows where most people do once every 2 weeks. So you can find customers in Australia that you can get 32 mows a year from and more. But people have in their head, no, we can only mow once every 2 weeks. And so they don't try and offer weekly mowing to those customers. And things like that, or within 2 suburbs, you might find some lawns take 15 minutes to mow and some take 3 hours to mow. And so there's huge variations that can alter how many customers you can actually manage on your books and how much they're worth per mow or per service. And then if you go into what you're doing, weed control, then the variables are massive there too, because you find, and this would be interesting to hear your perspective, within Australia, if you're offering weed control on a small property where you've got 150 square metres of lawn to do, it's relatively profitable. But if you go to a 1/4 acre block or a 1/2 acre block and you offer weed control, the cost of providing that service is so prohibitive for a lot of people that they're just not interested.
Yeah. That is a very, that's one of the differences. I don't know what it would be in meters, but let's just say, our average lawn size in where I live, in our service area, we are, I would have to say like 10,000 square feet is pretty much the standard for most of these properties.
What's that in the fraction of an acre?
10,000 square feet would be about a 1/4 acre.
So that's about 1,000 square meters.
Okay. So yeah, we're, iron out all the little differences. So, in this particular area, there's been towns that we used to service where the average lawn size was, like 3,000 square feet, which was very tiny.
Yep.
So, when we're going about that, when you start looking at that, you have to know what those numbers mean to you and what you're, when we start getting, one of the main reasons we don't do acreage is because, again, that starts getting into very cost prohibitive for most people. When we do have multi-acre lots and it's a residential account, most of the time we will just do a very small section that's surrounding the actual house itself.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it is kind of like, well, it still gets maintained by the guys that are mowing and everything, but then it turns into, this is more of a pasture area unless the person wants like a golf course quality lawn across their entire property.
And I've done that here too, where I had a customer that I did the area around their house at a high level, and then the rest of their lawn was just treated like a pasture almost, in the sense it gets treated completely different. The type of mower you use is different. The weed treatment, fertilizer, all that sort of stuff. They're not interested in doing the whole lawn, just the stuff around the house.
Right. And, these are the things that you need to understand. You need to understand your production times, your production rates, your costs per thousand. Like, that's how we generally do it, is cost per thousand when we're doing applications. But, these are just like some of the numbers that are very important for you to track. And that way you can, I know we talked about it earlier when we were on I think it was when we were on my show, we talked about having a customer avatar. And really all that is a fancy word for saying, who's your ideal client? What do they look like? And I don't mean like, hey, Gary, you're a white dude and you got a goatee and this and that, or it's like me and I got this big old beard. No, we don't care about that. We're looking at where do they live? What's their household median income? Meaning how much do they make? What's their house worth? In the States, there's areas where you could pretty much just look at the type of housing and know who lives there. It's like, oh, well, these must be high earners and they have disposable income. They have 2 Range Rovers in the driveway. Okay, well, more than likely these people can afford our services and they're looking for our services. So when you start understanding, in plain terms, who wants your service and who are you going to serve, that is part of the formula to building a successful business. And it's just one of those little avenues that we could go down that, could change certain people's entire business in a sense.
Yeah, and I'll give 2 comparisons here that make a lot of sense in terms of a customer avatar. And a lot of this comes down to how you run your business compared to whether the customer actually wants the service or not. So one business might offer lawn mowing only. They don't do gardening. They don't do anything but cut grass. And they will go to a customer and say, okay, I'm prepared to look after your lawn for X amount of dollars. And say $80 is pretty common in Australia, right? So it seems within a budget-conscious area, people are happy to split $80 and go, yep, I can handle giving you $80 for one service. And that ends up being a $1,600 a year customer, roughly. That same customer, if they're approached by somebody who offers the services you do, will start going, if we, instead of just getting the grass cut, we get weed treatment, fertilizer, grub treatment, etc., then our lawn looks better than the neighbours. And instead of spending $1,600 a year, they're spending $3,000-$4,000 a year overall, and maybe even $6,000 a year, and more if they've got gardens that are getting maintained as well as the lawns. Right, the customer isn't different, but the avatar you're looking at is very different, and it's a lot to do with the business mindset of going, I just want to cut grass, or I want to offer this customer what they actually want. Do they want their lawn to look better than the neighbours? Do they want their gardens to pop?
Yeah. When you identify who you're going to be serving and who's willing to pay for your services, it's a game changer.
Yeah.
And, that's an important part of the business. A lot of people don't talk about that. A lot of times, like we discussed before, they're more concerned about, what mower they're going to be using or, what whippersnipper. I'll use your terminology there. But we call them string trimmers or weed whackers is our, fun word for it. But
yep. Yeah, that's the one.
At the end of the day,
weed or weed whackers.
Yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, they both do the same job, and it's more of a let's not argue about that. Let's argue about how we could make your business more profitable. How we can focus on these business tactics that are going to really move the needle for you and actually make you more productive. Whether you're a single operator or if you start to scale and have multiple people working with you.
Yeah, and John, I think that's where, I'm curious to have your input on this, but that's where I have found business systems and understanding the business systems makes a really big difference. So once we're not just focusing on the profit margin, but we're okay, let's look at what business systems you've actually implemented that will make sure your business operates in a way that allows you to achieve good business goals. You'll often look at that and you go, oh, I already had business systems in place, but I just didn't label them and document them. And I think we mentioned talking earlier about putting your pants on in the morning.
Right. It's like
it's pretty straightforward. Don't need a document.
Yeah. A lot of times, if you think about it that simply, all of us really do have some sort of system in place, but we don't put it in writing. It lives in our head. And that's okay if you're, if you're a solo operator. But, if you choose to grow and you decide that you're going to scale your business to where maybe everything doesn't fall on you when you start to have employees, it's really important to document these little procedures. Yeah. So if, like I said, hey, I was going to it's like a Stepford Wives type thing happened where I'm not in my own body anymore. Somebody else inhabits my body. Well, I would, in order for somebody to take care of me as my this husk of a, this meat monster that I am, they would have to. There would have to be some sort of guide. It's like, how do you get out of bed? Well, you swing your legs this way. How do you get your pants on? Well, I put one leg at a time, and then I step up and I pull them up around my butt, and then I walk into the restroom and I do my thing, and then I brush my teeth and I wash my face. And some people might not understand that. It's like, well, if I don't wash my face, then I can't get the crusties out of my eyes, and then I can't see, and I got blurry vision for an hour. And you're trying to figure out, well, why do you have blurry vision? Well, my eyes get all crusty because I don't know, but it just happens, and this is how we deal with it.
This is just stuff you do, right? And you don't think about it when you're like on the average day, unless your eyes get really blurry and you're like, I can't see when I'm driving or something. But you just do what you do, right? But when you're trying to train an employee, this is where that becomes really important. And a little bit of a fun anecdote. It come across a lot of people that argue: do you wear pants or do you not wear pants when you're working? And
right.
What they actually mean is, do you wear long pants or short pants? But that's not how they say it. They're like, do you wear pants?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
I wear short pants while I work, but that doesn't mean I don't wear pants.
Right. Well, for us in the Furt and Squirt, we're supposed to wear long pants, and
PPE.
It's definitely one of those things where, if you hire somebody else, they may not even think about that. They'll show up in shorts. And, we supply uniforms, but let's just say they show up off the street. They'll be in a T-shirt and shorts, and maybe they'll be wearing flip-flops, and it's like, well, no, why didn't you come dressed to work? It's like, what do you mean? Well, I know I got to wear boots and I got to wear long pants. I'll give you the shirt that is required. It's a long sleeve shirt that not only keeps the chemicals off you, but it's also very breezy. It dries out real quick so it doesn't stick to you and chafe you. And then you got to wear a hat, and then you got to wear the glasses and all these things. And you just showed up, ready for the beach. And then it's like, well, if you set that expectation in your processes, in your systems, then there's no confusion. But if you just you just assume, then obviously you're just inviting confusion.
Yeah, so before we move on to the practical step there, do you know what we call flip-flops?
What do you call flip-flops?
Thongs.
Thongs. Okay, that makes sense. See, we've got the thongs. We also have
a different thing.
we have the we call them slides, and those are the ones that there's no, it doesn't hook here. It's just like your whole foot slides in.
Yeah, I thought thongs in the US was something completely different.
Thongs in the US is usually women's underwear. It's like string floss that doesn't leave much to the imagination.
So back to the business topics.
Yeah. Well, wait, so I knew before I went on here, I knew I was going to be, I went to the store and I was like, I know I'm going to be getting interviewed by Gary, so I might as well just represent while we're on.
Yeah. So you've got a kiwi fruit there.
A good one.
Beautiful.
Is this how you eat kiwis?
Super tasty and nice.
There's some people here, they just scoop out the green. I just eat the whole thing. I don't know if that's a faux pas in Australia or not. Only thing we got to worry about these little tags.
It's up to the individual. I prefer to scoop it rather than eat the skin.
I just wash them and eat them.
Yeah, fair enough.
Bunch of fiber in there. Anyway, let's get back to our track.
So business systems apply to every level of your business. And when you're on your own, and a lot of my listeners will be on their own, so documenting systems is not always necessary. It just becomes like second nature. It's just a habit. That's what they do in the morning, put their pants on. But when you've put on an employee, or you start growing your business and scaling, and you want to actually make sure that your business is efficient, you need to pretty much document everything you do. And you would have heard the acronym SOP or SOP.
Yep. Standard operating procedure.
Yeah. I haven't written standard operating procedures for everything in my business, but I've looked at a lot of people who have gone to that next scale from where I am, and you have done that. So if you don't have a standard operating procedure for your employees, what happens when they go out there to do the job?
Well, again, to throw back to what we were talking about before, if you don't have a system in place, this SOP, you're going to confuse them because they're not going to understand maybe they may not understand what the scope of work is. So, you send them out and they're thinking they're going to be mowing a lawn, and instead they're supposed to be treating a lawn. We have to we have to elaborate on these things. We have to train them with the SOP. And the easiest, it's very easy to remember. Donald Miller says this. He's another coach, but he says if you confuse, you lose. And that's so true. He has just to kind of throw who Donald Miller is. He has one of his more popular books is called Story Brand, and that's his big motto that he says throughout the book is when you confuse, you lose. And I apply that not only to our marketing, but also with any of our SOPs, any of our systems that we have. Our employee handbook is very robust. It's not exactly an easy document to write out, but if you take it step by step, ours is kind of unique because it's not only about like what is expected of the employer or employee, but it also shows like what needs to be done if a employee wants to, get a raise or move up to the next pay grade, I should say. If they want a different position within our company. And it basically lays it all out. So there's no confusion as to how they can not only benefit themselves, but it also benefits us. Most people don't care about the employer themselves. They're like, whatever, I just need a paycheck. But at the same time, we have it written out. So it's like, this is a real relationship. This is how you don't just gain favor just by showing up every day and then just slopping through the day. If you show that you want to move up, then you get rewarded.
And look, I think that's the brilliant thing there. If you have a written document that allows the relationship between the employer and the employee to be transparent, then there's less room for wrong assumptions to be made. And I've been guilty of those wrong assumptions where I had an employee that just kept on slowing down because he wanted to get paid for a 12-hour day. And I'm like, I want to be home in 8 hours, but he wanted to get paid for more hours. So he'd just slow down until we took 12 hours to get the day done. And it's like, come on, see you later.
Right.
Rather than fixing the expectations, I had to reach that point. It was like, see you later, because it wasn't repairable. And I think the same's true when you're dealing with customers or clients, right? That you want to try and establish clear expectations both ways. So I asked the client to explain to me, what is it they actually want? What are their expectations? Have they had somebody do it before? Are they happy with how that's been done? And how many hours do they spend there? What sort of equipment do they use? What results are they chasing? And then here's what my business does. Does that match up with what you want?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, all these things can be documented. All these things can be, systematized. It's not a sexy thing. It's not a fun thing. Sometimes you can make it fun. I've decided to, change things up instead of it being like we are still a small business. We do service a ton of people, but at the same time, we're not trying to be like a national company where it's all corporate and a bunch of bureaucracy. So, for your listeners, it doesn't have to be like very, stagnant. It could actually be fun to do these things. I know you might look at me and go, well, you got a sick sense of humor. I don't exactly know why you think doing numbers and creating systems and documenting all these things is fun to you, but we kind of do it in a fun way. And it just still shows that we're a small company.
Take a really practical example there, right? If I say to my employee, here's my Apple calendar, here's a list of jobs you need to do for the day, there's these expectations with each of these jobs, I've spent half an hour explaining to them what to do for the day. If I say, hey, here's my CRM, and I don't know which one you use, but here's my CRM, it's got all of that information in it already, off you go. I've just spent 30 seconds. Sorry, I missed that.
I was just saying,
do it again.
I don't think they support. I know the map feature doesn't really support in Australia. But
okay.
we use Yardbook. It's been a fantastic. I've been using it since 2015. It's amazing CRM. I don't know if they extend out there.
Well, I'm not actually confident on that, but within Australia, there's a couple of Australian-made ones that are focused on meeting Australians' needs better than some, but even like Jobber is in Australia. So some of the big ones are here.
I've got a quick shout out to our sponsor, Sortscape, at sortscape.com/LawnStars. Job management built specifically for lawn mowing and garden maintenance. If you're still running your business off a paper diary or a basic calendar, Sortscape gives you the stuff they can't. Drag and drop scheduling, route optimization, automatic customer text and email reminders, plus job timers, so you can track time on site and cut the after hours paperwork. Visit sortscape.com/LawnStars. It also keeps your crew organised with customer history, notes and photos right in the app, so you're not relying on memory or pretty sure we did that last time. Visit sortscape.com/LawnStars.
But we have one I'm promoting at the moment, Sortscape, which is really good for Australian businesses. And then there's another one called ServiceMate, which is also Australian. And, you know, depending on whether you want one that is really strongly catered to repeat service businesses or one that is more catered to doing more detailed one-off quotes, I promote Sortscape for the more repeat service, and ServiceMate tends to be more focused on trades that do a lot of one-off quotes.
Yeah, and that's important to make that
A lot of
differential, because depending on what business you're running, you want to find the tools, regardless of, there's plenty of times people ask me about Yardbook and they tell me what they do. And I say, I would find something different because it's not going to suit your need for what you're looking for.
But if that services you really well and it aligns with your business model really well, it's kind of like a stand-on mower. Like your employees are fighting over using the tool because it is fun to use.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, with our business when we were mowing, that was the only ones we had. Because prior, when I had a business that I started that failed, we were using walk behind. They're not the push mowers. They're literally like the walk behind mowers that.
Yep. They look like a zero turn, but they walk behind zero turn.
Exactly. And then when Wright standards came out, that was huge for us, and that was in the late '90s, early 2000s. I can't remember exactly what year it was, but when we got our hands on one of those, it was like a game changer, and everybody was flocking to them. And even when I started my new business, I never went to zero turns because I like the stand-on units better. But anyway.
Yeah, well, I've got two Wright standards, and they're a popular brand, which I recommend, just saying.
Mm-hmm. Especially, I'll tell you what, I'm not trying to play favorites here, but I know that there's, when it comes to Wrights, the durability of those things it surpasses many of the other competitors. Now, Wright doesn't pay me or anything like that. This is just preference. We used to, when we had mowing, I still have some of the Skags that we ran, but the only reason I kept those is because those were the ones that I used, and they were kind of like my personal machines that I took care of. I gave some of the other, ones to the guys. They beat the hell out of them and broke them all the time. Yeah. So I went back to Wright standards, and they couldn't break them. It was they just held up a lot better to the abuse. Somebody that doesn't exactly take care of the equipment like an owner would.
That's it.
That's the reason. So I mean, just kind of an unofficial shout
that's
out
one
to
of
Wright.
those. Yeah, and that's great because I'm going to put an ad for right in the middle of that.
Nice.
But that's one of those topics that comes up when you are running a business. If you go from operating the tools yourself to paying an employee to operate the tools, whether you've got written expectations in place or not, you can't expect employees to do exactly the same thing you do with that tool. It's going to be tested and abused in different ways. And, that's where if you're growing your business from your only employee, and in Australia I refer to them as a helper or an offsider, right? And that's often what they get referred to. They're not actually an employee. They're just a shadow. And, follow me, do what I do. And when you actually go, okay, we need to employ people specifically to do certain roles in the business, you find there's huge value in going, okay, well, I'm not just employing a shadow anymore. I need somebody who is going to be able to follow somebody else and do what they say and get trained to get more proficient in the business. But essentially, I need to be hiring somebody who is management material, somebody who can be, at the very least, a leading hand, so that you can actually go, all right, I can set that leading hand off to do a list of jobs without me, and I know that they're looking after the employee or the employees that are working with them, and trust that they're getting paid for it, but their interest is in making sure that the expectations of the business are living up to what we expect them to be.
Exactly. There's within my business, we would typically train somebody that we were going to make them a crew lead. And then once we get them, they would ride along with me. Then the next step is the crew lead goes out on their own, and then we get them another employee. And even though they're not a crew lead, they're just, whatever. They basically are, trim blow guy that, he would do the small equipment, while usually the crew lead will take on the mowing when we had it. Sometimes it was actually reversed, because trimming takes a lot more skill than that, but the crew lead wants to be able not to walk around all day, so it's kind of a toss up sometimes. But
it's a case of training, though, right? And that's the crew lead or the leading hand's role, is to actually be the servant leader. Like, I'll show you how to do it, train you how to do it. Once the offsider can cut straight edges and make sure the edges all look trimmed nice and neat, then the crew lead doesn't need to be doing that the whole time. They can be on the mower while the other person's on the whip.
Right. And a lot of times we would just cross-train everybody, so that everybody that was on that truck, they could grab any piece of equipment and be competent with it, and be proficient as well. Like, we would literally just, sometimes I would go out and I'd be like, well, I know the crew lead, you're expecting to take the mower, but I'm going to take the mower, and you're going to help the new guy or the lower guy on the totem pole. You're going to show him your tricks of how to trim right and how to possibly, route the whole lawn, because, we have, here in the States, most of us, we have sidewalks, we have driveways that are paved, and then all the stuff around the house, and it's not always linear. You might have a tree that's not quite close to anything, but it's like, look, this is the best way to do it. We're going to, instead of trimming all the way around the house and then making another trip all the way around and then going to the backyard and trimming around the trees, we're going to deviate, and we're going to,
And I've trained people the same. You do a loop around so that you get everything in one run, rather than going back and forth from one side to the other. Yeah.
And, for some people, they don't like that, but then they get used to it. And it's not that I try to tell people, like, hey, you have to do it this specific way. I know there's more than one way to skin a cat, but we found that this is the most efficient way, and it's going to save you a whole bunch of steps. And usually when I talk about it that way and I demonstrate it to somebody, I'll go out there, or when we did the mowing, I would go out there, and, there'd be guys that are, like 22 years old, and I'm sitting there and I'm showing them how to do something, and they're like, why are you walking faster backwards than I am? And literally, this is verbatim from one of my employees that didn't really hang around very quick, and you'll understand in just a second. But he's like, you're an old fat dude. How are you walking backwards faster than I'm walking forward? And I'm like, yeah, I didn't fire him because of that, but he ended up working himself out of a job because he wasn't very punctual, and he'd call off all the time. But anyway, he cut his own throat on that one. But the thing is, when you, again, as an owner, I never had any problem just not doing the fun stuff of riding around on a mower.
Of course.
I'd always jump on the gritty stuff too, and then show them. I'm like, yeah, I might have like 20 years. I might be 20. I might be your dad's age, but at the same time, I could still throw down and throw down those nice crispy lines. So
that's it. So, John, in your area, and I think in the US there's a lot of variation too. If you go Florida or somewhere like that, like they might do fortnightly cuts, or they might not catch the grass, or they might catch the grass. There's different things that change, right? But in your area, do you find with lawn care that it's more efficient to run a crew of 2 or 3 people, or do you go up more than that?
Depending on what you're doing, that's a great question because it really depends on what you're doing.
Of
Now,
course.
for what I do and what my company does right now, we're doing fertilization weed control.
Yeah.
It's really only profitable. I shouldn't say it. It's only profitable. It's most profitable when you just have a single technician in one truck going around
I thought you might
and
say
doing
that.
their routes. Now,
Yeah.
for mowing, with our residential accounts, we found a 2-man crew is the most efficient because one guy would essentially be on the mower, the other guy would be trimming, and then usually, because of the size of the lawns that we were taking care of, they would basically finish their jobs at the same time, and they would basically both grab a blower, or the crew lead would do the clocking in and out, or if there's any notes that we needed to do, he'd take care of that and then move on.
Yep.
If it's a larger maintenance crew, like let's just say, you're doing commercial work, depending on how big those properties are, that's when a third person would actually be profitable. Most time on residential lawns, though, if you have 3 guys, there's almost always a guy just standing around doing nothing. He's waiting for somebody to get done.
So that's much the same as here. Like if you're on your own, then you just get everything done and you go on to the next job. But if you've got 2 people, somebody's going to end up waiting. But 2 people seems to be a lot more efficient than 3 people because you're much more likely to have somebody waiting with the 3-person crew when you're doing lawns, right? When you go to outside of that, you deviate away from that and you're doing treatment plans like you're doing, then I think most people here would find a single person is going to be the most efficient. But again, you go to different sized properties and you might have, on a large property, you might have somebody mowing, somebody edging, somebody gardening, somebody doing a treatment. All the different things can be done, and you could have a crew of 3, 4, 5, even 10 people on a large job, and everybody's still got something to do.
Exactly. When we used to take care of HOAs, these homeowner associations, I forgot what you said you call them, but
Strata. Yeah.
So essentially it's like, it might even be, instead of it being like multifamily homes, it could be single family homes, but they're all part of this organization. So everybody has to, pay a certain amount, whatever. But the thing is, like, we had one in particular that was multifamily homes, and we had to take care of this whole property, and 10 was the magic number for that. And even though it didn't seem like you could, it was just really efficient to use 10 guys because, everybody had a job. We literally had a golf cart that was equipped with trimmer racks and blowers and extra fuel tanks. They were kind of like, they were the ones that would go and we had a 4-person golf cart that had all the tools on it and everything. And even when the mowers would start running low on fuel, we had those. We literally had racks on everything on this thing, but they were kind of like our home base, even though we didn't have anywhere as home base because this was kind of a unique situation. I started renting storage units across the street from this place because they just built a new storage unit place.
I was going to ask if you had storage.
it was awesome because it was like a satellite office for me, and instead of guys coming to our home base, they would actually just drive out to there, and that's where they'd clock in and start their day. They wouldn't even take the truck. I didn't even have trailers there, and I didn't have any trucks. They would literally just get on the equipment and then just drive it across the street to this big HOA. But again, you have to really look at what property you're serving and kind of stick with it, because again, if you're going to be mowing residential lawns, that might mean multiple 2-man crews. That would probably be the best fit. But then again, if you're doing bigger projects, maybe it's big commercial projects where you're maintaining things, again, you might have multiple trucks and trailers going to one place and they spend all day there until they get the job done and that might be a 10-man crew to knock
Yeah,
that out in one
that's it.
day.
Yeah, and then that raises the question about, do you have a truck going out there, or do you have a storage site out there?
Yeah, the satellite thing was, I started thinking about it, and I just happened to look across the street, and they were saying opening. I didn't know what it was, and they were saying that this was going to open in the spring, and I realized what it was, and before they were even offering, I found out who was running it, and I said, listen, I would like to get, what size units do you have? And they told me, and I said, I want 2 of them, preferably right next to each other. And they're like, we haven't even built them yet. And I'm like, I'll put a deposit down right now. I just want 2 of your, and they're like, oh, okay. So,
Perfect.
Again, it ended up saving us a lot on windshield time. It saved us a lot on wear and tear on trucks and stuff. So,
Yeah, for sure. So, John, I think there's another topic I'd love to touch on from your point of view. You're the perfect person for me to ask this. And I think I know the answers in Australia somewhat, but you're not in Australia, so it'll be refreshing. If you're to talk about what a business's potential is, and two different types of business, one's lawn care, one is lawn treatments, right? In Australia, I tell people, if you're solo on your own doing lawn care, you should expect to be able to hit $120,000 a year to 200, and I would say 200. Some people will hit $300,000 plus, right? But between 120,000 and 200,000 is quite achievable, and you should really be able to hit over $150,000 a year just working on your own, solo, doing a 5-day week, right? So let that sink in for a second. If you go to lawn care treatments, those numbers look different, not because of the amount of work you can get done, but because the profit margin might be different, but the cost of materials is there.
yeah. The one reason why I discontinued the mowing is because here in the States, it almost is sold as a commodity, and there's so much competition, and it was a race to the bottom because the profit margins really aren't there. It requires a lot of work, and obviously, weather is also another contingent. Is another thing you have to consider. It starts raining for 2 weeks straight, and you're behind, and you're working. You and your crew are working so hard to try to even keep up, and it requires so much equipment. It requires so much manpower. It's really a lower profit margin service, especially here.
Okay.
So that's
one of
true
here too. But there's variables, and what I think the weather patterns around Australia vary hugely. So there are some places where that issue of weather affecting your work is massive in some areas, whereas other areas it's negligible.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, certainly that the profit margin on lawn mowing compared to doing treatments or other things can be quite significantly different.
Well, yeah, I mean, with our profit margins on applications, I mean, it of course it depends on the company itself, what they're trying to achieve. But it's not unusual to see 35 to 40% margins on applications. There's even some that are higher. When you start looking at the inputs that you have to do for each service, the length of your season, the timing of this, even when you look at it, I find it's easier to know what to charge for applications. One, because I have a system put in place for it, but 2, we generally, like right now, we're starting to take delivery on our product for the new season. Our season generally doesn't start until about April.
You're still in the snow at the moment.
Right, it's like 8 degrees out here right now, 6 degrees. Well, Fahrenheit.
Fahrenheit, which is like minus 20.
Exactly. So we're talking negatives down in Celsius here, but it's I am usually able to secure nearly all of our supplies ahead of time. So there are some challenges to that because, one, you have to have the places to store it, and every square foot of your facility, whether it's a rental or your garage, or you have a shop, every square foot of it's valuable. Even though you're like, well, I'm saving money by ordering all of this material ahead, so like my prices are locked in, and I know even if like in 21, I think it was 21 when it was during COVID, and I think that was the beginning of the Russian-Ukraine war, and we found out that our urea prices were just going crazy. We used to buy like it was like $120 a ton or something for urea, and then it went up to $1,400 a ton, and I kind of stopped paying attention to it because it didn't affect me anymore because I bought all the things I needed. But anyway, when I have that in place, I know it's going to cost me X amount of dollars per 1,000 square feet to do this application. And it's usually not based off of like one product, but some of our applications, we might be putting down 6, 7 products at a time in order to achieve the goal we want, what the results are going to be. But I know how much it's going to cost me. And then I know how much we're charging. So I know, let's say we'll take the 10,000 square foot lawn, for example. I know that, I'm spending, let's just say it cost me $30 of my cost in material. And then I also have what we call a stop fee. I have this whole structure of a stop fee pricing just to mobilize. It's like, okay, we have our payroll involved, we have our overhead, all the expenses that we have for our business. That's all wrapped up in our stop fee. So it's like, okay, our stop fee is a standard. Maybe it's $50. And then let's just say it's like, just make the math super easy. It's like, it's $50 just to get there, and it's $50 in product we're putting down. So it costs us $100 with our markup involved. That might be, let's just make it simple, a $200 fee, the price of the service. Again, don't take those to heart. Those are just example numbers just to make the math super easy. But, you look at it and it's like that. I could kind of guarantee that as long as our production rates are within the boundaries. So if I say, hey, it's going to be 15 minutes worth of the stop should take us 15 minutes and we achieve that, I know what my profit margin is going to be. I know how much money should be coming in, how much of that we're hanging on to, and then everybody else gets paid,
Yeah, so it's a lot more predictable for you than the lawn mowing. You've got one person per vehicle, and the business model is easily replicable.
Yeah, it's very scalable. Not to say that mowing isn't scalable. It is, but then you have to understand, it's like when you go out, you're not, you say you set up a second truck. Well, you have the whatever your ute costs, right? If you have a trailer, how much each piece of equipment costs you. It's like it really, it's an investment that you have to try to quickly get your ROI out of.
Yeah, and I think with mowing you have a lot more variables in there because you go, okay, you might need that 21-inch mower, but you also need the 61-inch mower. And then if you're sending out 3 or 4 crews, you might have one crew that's running out doing acreage mowing and the other crew is running out doing those 15 to 20-minute jobs. And so you start having a lot more variables when you scale with lawn mowing. Whereas with your treatment plans, and I've seen this happen in Australia where there's variables, but you might go, all right, one crew is doing sports fields and the other crew is doing residential. But then that equipment does look different.
Mm-hmm. I learned my friend Martin Safidi.
Yes,
he's mowing and growing. I haven't talked to him.
He's in my area. He is like directly in my area.
Gotcha. That's great. Yeah, I've seen some of his work like over the past decade or so that we've known each other. And I noticed it's like you might have wide open acreage, and then you might, again, like you said, might need the a 21-inch mower to get into these like multi-level backyards that you could never get a zero turn or a stander on. So my advice when it comes to that is to, again, maybe not take each and every single one of those jobs, but become a specialist in specific neighborhoods to where it's like, if you're only doing 21 inch or maybe 30 inch mowing is what's going to fit in those areas, then maybe you become a specialist in that. Or like, Martin, I know he does, he's an acreage specialist. He used to do every single size, and I remember those videos that he would share. But I think as of late, and I think even to this day now, he specializes in acreage. That way he doesn't have to, have every single tool in the toolbox. He kind of, and that makes that exact same thing happen with us when we were still mowing. We only had 2 size mowers, and the reason was multiple. One, we would have 52-inch mowers, and we had 36-inch mowers. The reason being, when I would buy them, one, we would kind of need the 36s to get through the gates that we would have. If a 36 didn't fit in it, we didn't take the account.
Yep.
Some people are like, how could you do that? And I go, I did it, and it worked out, and it was profitable. You're not going to die if you turn down somebody that has like a 20-inch gate and you can't even fit a little push mower in there. You have to like pick it up or, do a wheelie with it to get it in the door. But
here there are areas where that wouldn't work. There's plenty of areas where people only do the 20-inch mower, or they have an 18-inch mower, 16-inch mower, so they can lift it up and down stairs easily. But
yeah, exactly.
But then you can do what Martin's done, and you can target the acreage mowing too. So
right.
Yeah.
Or you could find areas that don't have the steps in them. I mean, it's. I know that maybe I'm being too picky, too exclusive, but I mean that even happened with me where when we used to cater one town, it had those multi-step landscaping, and it was such a pain in the butt. And I said, what, we're not doing these anymore. And we survived, and it was fine. And we actually grew very quickly once we stopped wasting all of our time on a business, or basically on accounts that didn't fit our business model.
And that's true here. Like most people, when they're starting a business, and this is where I try and differentiate between the types of advice that it's worth giving to somebody. If you're starting a business here, you're strapped and you're going to take on as many customers as you want. Everybody fits your customer avatar. But once you've got 5 days a week that are fairly full, you start going, oh, I really want to drop those jobs that have got stairs in them, or I can't. And, even in the early days, you might go, well, I don't have a 61-inch mower, and here it costs you $20,000 to $35,000 for a decent 61-inch mower. The new person's not spending that money on a mower.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So they might want it. They're not doing it.
Right. That's why I stuck with the 52. That was one of the, 52 was one of the first purchases we made, mainly because it would fit on, 80% of our accounts. And it wasn't too big to where everybody freaked out about it. It was big enough to get production done efficiently. And then we added the 36s, one, to get into the backyards, and then two, the blade compatibility between the 52 and the 36 were the same.
Yep.
And a lot of the parts, depending on which manufacturer you get them from, there's a lot of crossover parts that would fit those machines. So when we started to standardize our fleet, that was a huge savings, because like I could just buy one type of air filter, one type of oil filter, nice. One blade size, et cetera, and it fit. And like all those wearable parts that wear out and you have to change out, it starts to add up pretty quickly.
Yeah. If you're out there tackling strata sites, commercial grounds, retirement villages, or those tough summer acres, a full commercial mower makes all the difference. That's why more commercial contractors are switching to Right Standers, the original stand-on mower, available in Australia through Cox dealers nationwide. Built tough for our conditions, the legendary AeroCore deck delivers a flawless, even cut every time. Quick manoeuvrability in tight spots, compact design for easier trailer loading, Kawasaki or Briggs engines, hydro gear drives, and a serious commercial durability. Stand instead of sit for less fatigue, better visibility, quicker jobs, and more profit in the bank. From the Standard B for great value to the X or ZK for next level performance, everyone is raving about the upgrade. Head to rightmowersaustralia.com.au or your local dealer today. Be sure to mention Aussie Lawn Stars. Right mowers get the job done faster, cleaner, and easier. Your back and your business will thank you.
See, I've got a 61-inch and a 42-inch right stander, and the blades are compatible. 2 blades on the 42-inch, 3 blades on the 61.
Exactly. The same thing with the 52. 52 was 3 blades. 36s were 2.
Yep.
So, it's the same story. If you're going to, now if you were to switch to a 52 mower, then you would want to probably try to, go with a 36 because, same, you get the idea. The 72s, I don't think there is a compatibility. Maybe the 48-inch blades? I can't remember.
I don't know. But the 72 is a machine. It's an absolute beast if you got the dual wheels on it.
Oh, the ZK. You know what that was the reason Ed Wright, he's a good friend of mine. The reason he called that a ZK, it stands for zero turn killer. That's what its actual code name was. So
very good.
Yeah, those are
awesome.
monsters. Those, especially the newer ones that have that. Man, it's like I think it's in the 40 horsepower range with the Vanguards. Holy moly, those things are beasts.
So the 61 that I've got, it's got the 37 horse on it, and it's the newer ones that have got the 40 horsepower Vanguard.
They're monsters. Those.
So have you had Ed Wright do an interview with you?
You know what? I haven't never had Ed on. Whenever we talk, we're catching up as friends and things like that. I really should have him come on the next time we're at Equip because that's usually when I see him. Sometimes I catch him in between, but that's more. I've invited him to
come on to my podcast, and he keeps dodging me.
Yeah. Ed's a really interesting guy. You should.
I bet.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever get him. If you ever get him on, you could start talking about planes. He loves planes.
Oh, well, yeah, there's a good topic.
Yeah.
I tend to get distracted talking about motorbikes on a lot of my episodes because I love riding motorbikes. But, I was talking to one person recently and their fascination was airplanes instead of motorbikes. And I was like, yeah, I can talk about that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Ed's a great guy. He's got, he took over as president of Wright Manufacturing a few years ago. His dad stepped down and then he stepped up, and they've got some great innovations that came out. And if it weren't for Wright, way back in the day with the Velke, that we thought we were top notch when we had the walk behind mowers with the Velke on them. We thought we were. I mean, it did increase our productivity quite a bit, but we thought that was the pinnacle.
Yeah, those things could be dangerous though. If you weren't ready for it and you start reversing, you run into some problems.
Well, yeah, like the single wheel. Yeah, well, actually, the double wheel ones I think bind up quicker. And I guess it all depends on which brand you get, but I do remember trying to put that in reverse, and instead of stepping off of it and man, I almost broke my leg because.
I bet.
We put it in reverse and it just caught the right way and it swivels under itself, and I almost got my leg trapped between the platform and then the bar that helps you drag around. That was painful.
Yeah, I'm glad they've never been popular in Australia. We went straight to the stand-on.
Gotcha. Well, thanks, Gary. You just remind me of a really painful memory from back in like 2000, 2001. I forgot all about that. I'm like, now my left leg's starting to hurt a little bit.
You're going to have a limp once you're finished here.
Yeah, exactly. I guess I was so young it didn't matter at that point in time. You're just kind of like, yeah, whatever. And then you shrug it off and move on with your life. But
John, it's been fascinating talking to you, and I'm very mindful that I've kept you up all night, and I should let you get some sleep.
Well, you know me, I don't ever get some sleep. Mr. Producer always yells at me about that. But no, I do appreciate it. Gary, it's been fantastic getting to connect with you today, and I really look forward to the future because I think, not for just me and you, but I think your audience, if they just pay attention, man, they can learn so much from both of us, It's
I want to come over there for Equip Expo this year if I can, and it'd be good to meet you in person. But you want to give people just a quick shout out and tell them where they can find you, because the more of my listeners that listen to you, the more they get reinforced everything I'm saying, but from your perspective.
Yeah, the number one way is Profits with Pajak, which is a podcast. It's available on all libraries. You can find it on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, whatever you listen to it on, it's going to be available. I'm sure I could give you a link that you could put in your show notes so people can find it easily.
For sure.
And then, you don't really have to check this out, but for my coaching and consulting, johnpajak.com is another way to get through to me. I should just change it to Profits with Pajak, so it's the single
same thing everywhere
name. But I'm kind of in the process of changing all that over because that's what my Instagram and Facebook and all that other stuff is still John Pajak. But Profits with Pajak, I think it's probably your best bet. You'll get a good feeling of like who I am, what I'm doing, and how it can help you. So.
Yeah, well, you and I align very much on our view on business. So if people like what they hear with me, they're going to like what they hear with you. It's just got an American accent there.
Yeah, just, what accent? What are you talking about?
Oh, I don't know.
I got to get a little angry. My wife always teases me. She was, if I get a little upset about something, my Chicago accent will actually kick up. And I for some reason, I cannot pull it up right now. I've just, maybe it's because I'm a little tired, but
never mind. Yeah, it's getting late early.
Yeah,
well, John.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it, and it's been good to chat with you.
It's been my pleasure, Gary. So, thank you so much, and I look forward to coming back.
Yeah, well, I think we've got a lot more we could talk about, so I won't keep you up any later.
Thank you for listening to Aussie Lawn Stars. Please remember to rate and review the show on the Apple Podcasts app or the player you use. Exciting new shows are released every Monday. Make sure you follow or subscribe to hear the next episode.